Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 15th, 2022 Board of Selectmen meeting. I have a few opening remarks. This open meeting of the Northborough Board of Selectmen is being conducted remotely, consistent with the July 16th, 2022 Act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. All members of the Board of Selectmen are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows the Northborough Board of Selectmen to meet entirely remotely, so as long as reasonable public access is afforded, so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of the meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link posted on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. Let's make sure the members are all here and audible and so forth. Julianne, are you here?
I'm here.
Excellent. Jason?
Here.
Scott?
Here.
Kristen?
Here.
I'm Mitch Cohen. I am here. From staff, we have John Kader.
Present.
And I see Fire Chief Dave Parenti.
Present.
And I see DPW Director Scott Charpentier.
Present, Mr. Chair.
And I see Police Lieutenant Brian Griffin standing in for the chief who is on vacation.
Present.
Excellent. And we also have, it says Northborough Cable is helping us out. Thank you as always. All right, so let's get started. First item on the agenda is, as always, public comment. Again, this is for any comment from members of the public who wish to speak to anything that is not on our agenda, because you'll have the opportunity to speak to anything on the agenda during that item. If you have any interest in speaking up now, go ahead and raise your virtual hand and I will recognize you. Going once. Going twice. Gone. We will move on to the first agenda item, which is the approval of the July 18th, 2022 meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would like to move that the that we
In all fairness, I sprung this one on Kristen at the last minute.
You did. I move the board vote to continue, no, not to continue the public hearing, sorry. I move the board vote to approve the meeting minutes of the July 18th, 2022 meeting.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Kristen, seconded by Jason. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, Julianne?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Kristen?
Abstain.
I vote aye. Meeting minutes are approved. Thank you. All right, so we have a public hearing to continue or to do something with for Forbes Whitney. Does someone have a motion to that effect? You're muted, Jason. That's all right.
How's that? Is that better?
Everyone gets one freebie.
There we go. I move the board vote to continue the public hearing for the application of G&I Roman numeral 9 Forbes Whitney LLC to amend the existing above ground storage license for premises located at 30 Forbes Road to the September 12th, 2022 meeting of the board at 7 p.m. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. We are continuing this because the planning board needs to do some work on this. And there will be no, the applicant is not here, so it won't be taking any comments or having any further discussion on this evening. John, did you have anything you wish to add? Okay.
Nope.
All right. All those in favor, Kristen?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Unanimous in favor of continuing the hearing. And we move along to another public hearing. I will open the public hearing for the poll petition 231-22239 from Massachusetts Electric Company, DBA National Grid, and Verizon New England for new poll locations on Brigham Street. John, do we have?
We're supposed to have a Michael Parent, and I do not see him in the attendee list.
Yeah, we confirmed this afternoon, Michael Parent from National Grid should be in attendance, but he's not for whatever reason. So,
Okay.
if you'd like, we can, I believe Scott can, Charpentier DBW can speak to these, and if there's no issue or concern, we can move forward. If there is, we can continue.
Sure. Scott, I know you weren't expecting to, but if you are comfortable, could you fill us in?
He's
on this
expecting
petition?
to.
Okay.
No problem. Always prepared, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
So this petition was filed by National Grid. It's for replacement of 2 guy wires on trees. As you enter Brigham Street from South Street, they're on the left-hand side just before you reach the historic burial ground. One of the trees is in poor condition. The other tree is not, but these guy wires have been on the radar of National Grid for a number of years to be removed from trees and put in a more conventional fashion. Fred Litchfield, our town engineer, did prepare a memorandum that's in your package. He reviewed it with the National Grid design engineer, Jeff Silva. The DPW and the town has no concerns or issues with this petition.
Excellent. Thank you. I still don't see anyone coming in from National Grid. So any discussion from the board or from staff otherwise? Scott.
And just a couple informational questions, and Scott, you might know the answers to them. So it seems like we have a few poles that were anchored by a guy wire over to trees. Do you know when that practice stopped? I don't
know when it stopped. I do know the National Grid has been periodically reaching out to this community as well as other communities to remove these tree guys. Those of you who drive up and down Green Street, I believe, are familiar with a few of them that are tied off to trees that have been left as statues, so to speak, where you remove the crown and there's nothing but a tall stump remaining. That stump is deteriorating and it's not a very safe condition. I know National Grid wants to correct that. So we see more and more of these coming through.
And then the second question, Scott, do you know, so then a new guy wire goes across to the new pole, do you know the height of the guy wires?
They'll meet the minimum height requirements of 14.5 feet. Where there is a sidewalk, they'll have a pedestrian guy, which is when you have a guy wire coming over, and there'll be a vertical strut in advance of the sidewalk and beyond the sidewalk, so you have adequate 7.5 foot vertical clearance for the sidewalk. That's not the case here on Broad Street or on Upper Haven for the next one.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay. Julianne.
So you mentioned that one of the trees is healthy, one of them is not. Are they going to leave the healthy tree and remove the tree that's deteriorating, or?
They'll remove the guys from both. The remaining trees in both these instances are public shade trees. So the onus will be on the town, myself, the tree warden, to remove the remaining statue or tall stump. The other tree is healthy. It'll heal well from just an anchor being removed.
Okay, so that's our responsibility.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I did just see in a 401 phone number join in. If that caller is from
Michael Parent would be the name. If that's
yeah.
Michael Parent, maybe he should raise his hand and we'll let him in.
Yep. I think is it 9 to raise your hand on a telephone Zoom? I seem to recall. If that phone number is not Michael Parent, then that's okay. Jason, did you have your hand up a moment ago?
I was just going to bring that to your attention, Mr. Chair. The
Okay.
phone number that came in.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, that person has not raised their hand, so I'll assume that that's not the applicant. Is anyone uncomfortable moving forward with this without the applicant on the line? I know the town has already approved everything that they can at the staff level. I'm okay with. Oh, we do have Bruce Tate asking to speak, and this is a public hearing. So, Bruce, I'll bring you in. Bruce, you can unmute yourself if you'd like.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hello. I believe I'm excuse me, I believe I'm being appointed as a special police officer for the town of Northborough.
Yes, we're not at that agenda item quite yet.
Okay, I'm sorry.
If that was the case. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to send you back to a regular attendee, and we'll bring you in when it is your turn. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Okay. I thought that was the case there, but wanted to be sure since this is a hearing. Any other comments from the board? Any other comments from staff? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Also one that
Mr.
wasn't
Chair,
assigned.
I-
Yes, Scott.
Yeah, I move we close the public hearing.
Great.
Second,
Okay, motion made by Scott, seconded by Julianne to close the hearing. Kristen, how do you vote?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Julianne?
aye.
Jason?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Public hearing is closed. Is there a motion on the application?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to approve poll petition 231-222-39 as submitted by the Massachusetts Electric Company, doing business as National Grid and Verizon New England.
Is there a second?
Second,
I'll give that one to Kristen. Motion made by Scott, seconded by Kristen. All those in favor, Julianne?
aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Approved unanimously. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to the other poll petition. I will open the public hearing for poll petition number 305-79396 from Massachusetts Electric Company, DBA National Grid, and Verizon New England for a new poll location on Pine Haven Drive. Similarly, we don't have the applicant here. So Scott, tag, you're it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this poll petition is again to remove a guy that's attached to a tree, but it's to install a new pole approximately 9 feet north of the existing pole location on Pine Haven. It's approximately across the street from J Street in the Pine Haven neighborhood. We met, you have a memorandum in your package from the town engineer, Fred Litchfield. He actually met on site today with the design engineer, who again is Jeff Silva, and the adjacent resident. Talk about the proposed pole location, the new guy wire location. My understanding from conversations with Fred this afternoon after that meeting, all three were in agreement with the proposed location. The new pole location was staked, as was the guy location. Again, the resident was present during the meeting and on the site and agreed with the location. I believe the resident, Michelle Mendelson, is present in the meeting, and she may also have a comment with her hand raised. In the memorandum, it identifies that Public Works has no concerns or issues with this petition or the proposed locations.
Great. Before I recognize Ms. Mendelson, any member of the board have any questions or comments? And we can return to that. Scott Rogers.
Yeah, I thought of one more. I should have brought it up a little bit earlier. In each petition, there's phrasing about reserving the right for any underground connections and lays. Scott, do you know if any applies based on the design meeting that happened this afternoon?
I didn't see any specific notations for undergrounds. Typically, the underground requirement is grounding related, which includes a 4-foot-long copper rod that's driven into the ground directly adjacent to the installation. I don't know if this petition requires a grounding or not, or if it's determined during field operations, but typically that's what they're looking to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other members of the board? Okay. Michelle Mendelson, I am going to be bringing you in. Let's see, I am promoting you to panelist, so your camera may turn on because of your version of Zoom. Hi, welcome. You can unmute yourself, please.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Absolutely. Welcome to our meeting.
Thank you. I was wondering if it might be helpful if I share a photograph of the location with you to kind of walk you through my concerns.
That'd be fine with me.
Okay.
Let me know
So
if
I'm
you
gonna-
have any difficulty sharing your
Mr. Chair, the only people that can share with the way we have it set up are panelists.
Yeah, and I think I'm promoted, so it looks like it's letting me.
Yeah,
Can you see my screen? Okay.
I don't. Yes, now I see the photograph.
Okay. Can you see my cursor as I move around?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. So as you can see, the pole is currently here with the guy going to the tree over here. Okay.
Sure.
And what they are proposing is to move the pole to the back. You can see this is a parking space that's paved. They want to move the pole over here, and they want to tether the tie approximately here. And I just want to make sure, and this is what I agreed upon with Jeffrey Silva of National Grid, and what I agreed upon with Fred Litchfield, the town engineer, when they came out today. My biggest concern is I don't want to lose any use of this parking space. And so if this location of putting the guy line and tethering it to the ground here makes it so it angles and I lose any of that parking space, they told me that I could let them know that, and they would move that, they would tether it further back to try to give me a wider space to make sure it doesn't interfere. So the agreement was to put it where they have marked it, but the agreement was also to move it if I was not satisfied with access to that space.
Okay. That's good information. Scott Charpentier, you have your hand up.
So I did speak with Fred this afternoon after a site meeting. What Michelle is describing is exactly what Fred described to me. And Jeff, the design engineer for National Grid, was present, and Fred indicated that he also agreed with that. Michelle, I concur with everything you're saying.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it was in the notes that was the full agreement. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Jason, you have your hand up, and I see a hand up from the audience as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to ask is there anything more precise about what is satisfactory versus unsatisfactory in terms of like height of the wire to allow a vehicle to be in that space, something to that effect? I guess I'm just wondering if there's some measurement or some kind of metrics or something that assist Verizon in doing the initial installation to be sure that it's going to be satisfactory.
Scott.
So the objective of the design as it currently sits is to have the guy wire anchored within the public way. The parking location that Michelle is describing is within the public way. The accommodation to push the guy further back would likely result in the guy foundation being located on private property. That would be a relationship between the private property owner and National Grid relevant to a permanent easement for a guy foundation. The paving of the right-of-way and the parking on the right-of-way is not an uncommon occurrence in Northborough. The location doesn't impede on our snow removal or emergency response services. So it's not something we typically, raise flags about. But again, if the guy was to be moved further back, it would likely be on the private property and require an easement arrangement between the utility owner, National Grid, and the property owner, Ms. Mendelson.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
The 401 number with the hand up is in fact Michael Parent. I just got confirmation, so we may want to bring him in.
Yes,
Let
very
him
much so.
respond to his application instead of us.
Sure. Michelle, I'm going to, if it's all right with you, I'm going to send you back to an attendee. And before I let you go, are you in agreement of if the guy wire needs to be on your private property, you're okay with that, given the discussion today, so that it's out of the way of the driveway?
Yes, I want to be part of the discussion of whether or not it needs to be moved. But yes, that's a satisfactory plan B. Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. So I am going to put you back in attendees. And I'm going to, oh, good, I didn't kick her out. And I'm going to bring in the 401 number.
And I believe it's *6 to unmute.
Very good. Hello there.
Good evening.
Hi, thank you for joining us. Could you identify yourself,
Sorry
please?
about that.
That's okay.
This is Michael Grid.
Hi, Michael.
I've been watching the meeting, but I'm trying to raise my hand, and I had my headset on, but wasn't getting recognized. So I called in. I apologize for that mix-up, but
that's fine.
So I've been trying to listen while trying to connect, and I did speak to the engineer on the job, Jeff Silva. He said he met with Fred Litchfield today, and also the homeowner, and discussed the length of the guy wire from the pole. I think there was a question about how far back it could go. The guy wire has a specific tension that it needs to hold back. So it's based on the weight of our wires, and then we have some calculations based on wires from the phone company or cable. So there's a minimum that has to meet. If we were to go further back, we wouldn't put it up as much tension, because it might cause the pole to lean back a little more. So there's potential to go back a little further. I would just say that there'd be a little concern over a vehicle parking there and having a guy wire trying to go over the top of it. Can't guarantee the size of the vehicle that's going to park there.
Okay, so this sounds like a little bit of a different take than the homeowner represented from her meeting at the site today. So you're saying that you wouldn't be able to guarantee that the homeowner would be able to continue to use that parking space for, I don't know what vehicle they have there, but any common vehicle.
I think the engineer went out there today did say that the length that they were looking to do it at could make it accessible for whatever vehicle either they had there or a certain size vehicle. So if that's the only vehicle that's going to park there, or like a small, like a car, like a coupe. I'm saying not parking a Hummer there, but a small regular car would be fine with the lead length there. I just, we obviously can't guarantee that a vehicle of a larger size, like a truck or something like that, would be able to fit there based on what he had staked out there today. So
Okay.
we can do it. We could meet, the requirements of what was discussed today, and they meet our minimum requirements of guiding the pole. But I just, if something happened there, somebody happened to park there or put a vehicle there that was too large for that area, then the onus would be on that person or whoever that parked there. Because we can't accommodate, the guy wire can only go so far out from the top of the pole in order to do what we needed to do there. The only solution that would be, if we were that worried about, we'd have to put a pole in further back on the property, and there's the easement situation, and then that pole in turn would need an anchor behind that. So that's an extreme circumstance.
Okay, Scott, DPW.
Just a bit of information. The right-of-way limits there are approximately 6.5 feet off the pavement edge. Just to put it in perspective, a standard parking spot is 9 feet wide. The right-of-way is 6.5 feet off the pavement edge.
Okay. So the wire then would certainly need to be anchored further back from the right of way if the parking space is 9 feet wide. Am I reading that correctly, Scott?
I don't know how far back the guy design is.
Okay.
When I went out in the field and looked at the location, it appeared a 9-foot north move of the pole was just about at the limit of the paved area that the resident put in. You know, a foot here or there is kind of as accurate as we can get with GIS.
Right. Question for the applicant. A representation was made by the homeowner a few minutes ago before you joined the meeting. I don't know if you heard it, that the person that was on site from your company said that if the wire was placed in a situation where it interfered with use of the parking space, that it would be, you would move it. Is that accurate or not accurate?
Oh, yeah, that's definitely true. But then we fall into the realm of possibly having to get an easement from that person to do so. So
Sure. Yeah. And at this meeting just earlier before you joined again, she was willing to do that if that was the case.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Ms. Mendelson has raised her hand again, so I'm going to also bring her in. And given that you're the applicant, I'm going to keep you on the line. Oh, Michelle, let's again bring you in as a full panelist again due to the version of Zoom. And if you could unmute yourself.
Hi,
Welcome
yes,
back.
thank you. I have, knowing that Mike is now listening too, I have another question. I had suggested perhaps, you spoke about the pole easement prior to mine, and how for one of them you were going to put the sidewalk kind of bar that goes across to push the wire out further to make room for the sidewalk. Would putting one of those in help with the angle so that it wouldn't cut across my space as much? Because that's something also that I would, accept as an alternative to make sure my space was usable.
So we do use sidewalk anchors. However, they don't have the same holding strength as a regular down guy. So in this particular instance, since it's a tap across the street, our preference would be not to use one in that case because it could end up making the pole, it may not holding the pole to the proper strength. So, we would tend to avoid that scenario there.
Okay. Thank you for that information. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle. You okay if I, you know what, I'll if it's all right with you, I'll just leave you in for the duration of the discussion.
Thank you.
Since this impacts you more than anybody else. I have another question for the applicant. Based on the picture that we saw, and the description is this pole was going to be moved about 9 feet. Is it conceivable to move the pole further so that it extends behind the parking space? It looked like there were some shrubs back there, or is that not feasible due to engineering requirements?
So the existing pole, you'd say, back behind the parking spot?
Yes.
No, we can't do that because then the wire is in line on that side of the road, give or take a foot or two. So moving it back would stretch the wire back on, so then it would require an easement, one thing. Then it creates more tension. It's not normal practice for us to do that. We would keep that in line. I think if we had to, worst case scenario, to extend it, further out, a pole would be a pole behind it with some sort of guiding between the pole on the road and the pole on the property and the guide wire behind that. So that gets to be a little intrusive. I'm not 100% sure of the tree or bush situation there and what the homeowner would be willing to do about that, but that's not something that we would want to entertain, like having to take care of. We'd have to have a middle ground. Say, well, we'll install. If you agree, let's put the pole in the anchor, but we'd have to come to an agreement on how the trees and stuff get removed.
It's reasonable. Members of the board, any other questions as we continue this discussion? Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. based on what I'm hearing, and this goes back to my earlier concern, I guess I don't feel that there's a clear enough understanding and agreement about what the mitigation would be here to do what's necessary for in terms of safety and structural integrity for the pole and what satisfies the requirements of the homeowner here. Is there additional discussions that maybe need to take place before we move forward with this? Or if we were to approve this, is there still latitude for some negotiation to figure out how this can be done in the best possible way?
Julianne.
I would be more in agreement with Jason's first thought, which is I think the conversation should continue between town staff, appropriate town staff, the homeowner, and National Grid to see what is the best and safest way to do this. That's just my opinion.
And Mr. Chair?
Sure, Jason.
I guess I'd ask for the homeowner's opinion about that also.
Yeah, I mean, it's been explained to me by both Jeffrey Silva and Fred Litchfield, the necessity for moving of the pole. As I'm sure the board is aware, my neighborhood is, in my opinion, typically one of the first neighborhoods down with the power, one of the last ones up with the power. Any improvements that can be made to mitigate power outages. I had one today, by the way, just to let you know. I'm all for that. And I don't want to just be here to cause trouble. I know, Jason, that you had asked before, what type of vehicle are we looking to park there? I'm looking for, friends, relatives. I'm looking for something that is non-commercial, right? I'm also looking, eventually one day I may sell the house. I want to be able to have this as a working parking space, right? So these are my concerns. Where the current pole is proposed and where the current line is proposed to go into, no one has come out with a long pole and a long rope to show me exactly where it would hit, but just eyeballing it, it looks like it will be as far back as they can make it. It looks like it will be far back in the parking space. I've voiced these concerns since I was first informed that this pole moving was going to happen. And I just want the option, because it will be cutting at an angle that comes through there, that if it impedes a foot, let's say, into my paved area, that's unacceptable. But right now, just eyeballing it, I mean, this may work out, but it sounds like from what my parent is saying that, what I was told both times I met with Jeffrey and then both times when I met with Fred is not true, that like this plan B is not necessarily a very good plan. So that's where I kind of have concerns. Like you were saying, Jason, and has been said before, if they try plan A and it doesn't work out, is there an option for me to voice and for us to revisit?
Mike, do you have any comments on that?
Well, from what I heard from Jeff today, they seem to be in agreement. So I didn't want to go against that. I'm just, just like the homeowner is voicing concerns about stuff. I'm just speaking in terms of National Grid, like, hey, okay, we're going to move the pole as, over 9 feet. So that looks like it puts it at the back end of that parking area as best they possibly can, while keeping it in line with the pole line that goes down the street that intersects where that pole is. I trust Jeff's field work, and seems to be everybody was in agreement for that. So I'm not looking to circumvent what he discussed with the homeowner and the town today. So, but if for some reason the situation doesn't work going forward for some odd reason or whatever, there would be the ability, if something happened to the guy wire like somebody, ran to or something like that, then we'd have to fix that. And that most likely we'd have to try and extend it out further with a pole or something like that. So
my preference, I think, and probably all of ours, is to avoid completely the risk of a car hitting the guide wire, and have the guide wire placed in such a way that it would not get hit.
Mm-hmm.
Scott Charpentier, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just 2 points of clarification. One, again, the paid parking areas within the right of way. And second, from a public works perspective, anytime we're discussing something about a specific residential use, my perspective is 50 and 80 years later. Not necessarily what this abutter is going to park there happens to be a sedan. It's what may be implied later that a box truck can go there. So just food for thought for the board.
Right. Or you have someone coming to a plumber comes with a large van, something like that, and goes there, which is larger than a typical vehicle that you might park there, but isn't unusual at all to have in a residential driveway. Right. All right, so we can move forward, I think, in a couple of different ways. We can approve it with the understanding that the location of the guide wire could be moved, which I think is what I'm hearing committed to from National Grid. Or we can continue the hearing and have, if there's anything more finite that can be done on site, and then referenced at a future continuation of the hearing. I think, we want to get this pole moved. We just have to do it in such a way that it's not going to interfere with the current use of the property by the homeowner. Thoughts? Julianne?
I would be in favor of continuing the hearing and getting a little more analysis of the issue.
Okay. Scott or Mike, do you think that there is the possibility of some more information that we could gather by the right folks meeting on site and marking things out and measuring? Scott?
If the desire of the board is to continue to get a better grasp of what the design layout is, I don't see any reason why the applicant could reconsider an easement with a further back position guy, and to have a very simple geometric calc on what the vertical clearance is below that guy. That can be done in a continuance, in a couple of weeks for the next meeting, in my opinion.
Mike, are you amenable to that?
Sure, I don't have a problem with that. I'll bring it back to Jeff. You can discuss further. Putting a pole. So does the town have specific requirements on a parking space as far as width goes?
We do have width and height requirements. I'd be happy to convey that over to Jeff Silva, your design engineer. Mike?
Sure. Just so if we go out and discussing, hey, where we're going to put a pole, and an anchor behind that, the height thing I don't think is a problem, because we'd put a 35-foot pole which goes about 5 feet in the ground, so that'd be 30 feet from the ground. And then it would come down from the top of the new pole to that pole. So there'd be plenty of clearance there. It was just a matter of placing the pole and the width of it on the customer's property.
Sounds like that's something we can work out.
Yeah.
Okay. Michelle, you're, I assume, agreeable? Okay, very good. In which case, what I'll do is, sounds like, is any member of the board disagree with that approach?
Sounds fine.
Okay. In which case, I will entertain a motion to continue the public hearing to our meeting, which, while we haven't formally set the September meetings, the assumption is the 12th of September. We would have a meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we continue this public hearing to a future meeting in September. What's the date again? September
12th.
To September 12th, or as soon as possible.
It would, Mr. Chairman, it should be a date and time specific. So September 12th, I'd recommend 7:05 p.m.
Okay. I move that we continue this public hearing to our next Board of Selectmen meeting, September 12th at 7:05 PM.
Okay, motion made by Julianne, seconded by Scott. Any other discussion? Julianne, how do you vote?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
And Scott?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Hearing is continued. Good luck to all those involved getting this sorted out. Thank you very much for your participation, Michelle and Mike.
Thank you.
Very good.
Hey, can I just speak to the first poll?
Yeah, absolutely.
I did hear that you guys approved it, which is great. But so, just to speak on it a little bit, that job was a very old job that somehow slipped through the cracks. I think it was even probably written up when Verizon was still replacing poles, and somehow got through that it wasn't needed anymore. And by the time it was discovered that, hey, we still need this, but it's still sitting out here in limbo, I think it had to be just set up as a design that we were going to replace those tree guys that were out there. I did look at the sketch that was submitted. It looks like there was some little discrepancies between what we're asking for and what's actually going on. So I think the sketch actually showed 3 poles for some odd reason, but I think there's only 2 the tree guys were off of poles 4 and 6. So those stub poles would need anchors behind those in addition to that pole. But I think the sketch showed another pole, like pole 3 maybe, but the original design that I saw in our system just has, I think, pole 3 maybe being replaced. It doesn't have a tree guy on it for some reason. So I'm not sure why it was submitted that would be needed. But I think the cover letter might have said 2 poles and 3 anchors. And I couldn't find another anchor outside the 2. So I just wanted to put a little clarification with that just in case something comes up.
Okay. Well, we've already closed that hearing and approved it. So,
Yeah, so
I
if
imagine
there's an issue with that one, Mike, you'll need to come back to us for a change. It's been approved as submitted. If that's not accurate, you need to change something through the chair, you can petition back the board.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's just a matter of it's one less, so we won't be installing another pole. So it's not like we're asking for more. It's actually it should only be 2 poles on there for some reason. So
if you can do us a favor and send a note to John or to the DPW and just be explicit as to what you're actually changing relative to what the application was, and then they can make a decision whether our approval includes what you're proposing to do or whether we need to do something else. Hopefully we won't need to do this again. Not that I don't mind talking to you, but
I just want to make sure
get it done.
I didn't want to get approved and then it gets done and then you say, hey, what happened to the other pole that was supposed to be here? And so we didn't need it. So I mean, that does happen on occasion. There are cases where we call for a wire and they go out there and they send things a little differently, and they end up not needing it. It ends up being a good thing. We don't necessarily want extra stuff out there if we don't need it.
Sure. Understood. So so again, if you can just send a note to the town with specifically what you're looking to do, and then we'll respond back with whether you need another hearing, whether you should go ahead. All right.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So we have dispensed with poll petitions, which were a lot more interesting than typically. Next on our agenda, we have Lieutenant Brian Griffin coming in to talk about police officer and then a special police officer. So Brian, you're already here. Welcome. The floor is yours, sir. You're muted though.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, everyone. I'm on tonight requesting the appointment of Ryan Clark as a full-time police officer. This position will fill the need of an opening that we have due to a recent retirement. Ryan is currently a full-time police officer with the Nantucket Police Department. The reason he's not on tonight is due to the fact that he's actually working a shift in Nantucket, and they're probably pretty busy. But he did want to apologize for not being here live tonight, but that is the reason. Ryan is originally from Littleton, Massachusetts, where his family still resides. He is a graduate of Littleton High School. After high school, he went to Bridgewater State University, where he received his bachelor's degree in criminal justice with a minor in psychology. We are very excited to have Ryan join us here at the Northborough Police Department. He is fully trained and certified police officer. So therefore, we will not have to send him to the police academy, which is good news for us because we can get him on the road quicker. I'm asking that his appointment be effective September 6th, 2022.
I participated in those interviews. He was a great candidate, and I take this that Northborough will become a hopping place, more exciting to tourists than Nantucket. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to appoint Ryan Clark as a police officer effective September 6th, 2022.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Kristen, seconded by Scott. Any other discussion? Julianne, how do you vote?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
I vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. Congratulations. And you've got another one, Ryan.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I think Mr. Tate might be in the waiting room. Bruce Tate.
Yes, I'm going to bring you in, Bruce.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Hi, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Hello.
Mr. Chair, my next candidate is Bruce Tate. Bruce Tate is a retired Quincy police officer. He currently works as a police officer for the Boston University Police Department. Bruce is a Northborough resident and a U.S. Army veteran. I'm requesting that Bruce be appointed as a special police officer to assist with traffic details and other authorized activities. Bruce is fully trained and certified.
Excellent. Bruce, welcome. Any comments before we vote? Well, first, ask Bruce if he has any comments or questions.
No, other than that, I'm thrilled to have this opportunity. I'm a recent Northborough resident. I just bought a house in April, and I would be thrilled to assist the town.
Welcome to Northborough. Jason, you had your hand up?
Yes, I just want to welcome Mr. Tate and thank him both for his past service and for his now continued service on behalf of the town of Northborough. Much appreciated.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Okay. If there are no other comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to appoint Bruce Tate as a special police officer effective August 16th, 2022.
Second.
Motion made by Jason, seconded by Julianne. Any other discussion? Jason, how do you vote?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
I vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. Congratulations, Bruce.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity.
And congratulations, Lieutenant Griffin, on a couple of great new members of your staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of the board.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay. Next up, we have Andy Dowd to talk about the upcoming election and so forth. Andy, I'll bring you in as a panelist. Always nerve-wracking because when I do this, it makes the person disappear and then reappear. And I'm waiting for Andy to reappear. Here we go. Andy, you are muted. If you can unmute yourself, and if you so desire, turn on your camera.
There we go.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So I actually have three different items tonight for the board, and I'd also be happy to give you a very brief update on the upcoming elections this fall. The first item on the agenda is the annual appointment of election officers. That's something that's required by law, that the Board of Selectmen annually appoint those that may serve as election workers at the polling place, and that's on an as-needed basis. So you have that memo along with an attached list of the current workers that we are utilizing. The law also does allow for us to make interim appointments during the year as needed. If something comes up and we, have a shortage of workers, I have the ability to do that in between the 1 year. So I would ask for your motion and approval of that annual requirement.
Anybody have any questions before we do that? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Actually, just a quick question. So
Sure.
Andy, about 45 folks? That seems on
Yeah,
this
I
list?
believe that's the approximate number. We're always looking for more. So anyone out there that's always thought I'd love to be an election worker, please reach out to me.
All right. So yeah, Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to appoint those individuals who appear on the 2022-2023 election officer list for a term beginning on September 1st, 2022 and ending on August 21st, 2023, as submitted by the town clerk, Andrew Dowd.
Second.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Or anyone from the public want to chime in? As a reminder, we open up all of our agenda items to any public comment. There's not a lot of public participation tonight. Okay, seeing nothing else. Let's see, we already had, motion made by Scott, seconded by Jason. Is that correct? Excellent. And how do you vote, Scott?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. You have your list of election workers, Andy. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Very good. All right.
The second item that is on the agenda is the assignment of police officers to the polling place. And this is something new. It's part of the recent permanent changes to the election laws, which I'll go over in further detail at the end of these items. But one of the changes now, instead of the person in charge of the police department making the assignment, it now requires that the Board of Selectmen make that vote. So we have a suggested motion that would basically allow the person in charge of the department, which is typically the police chief, to assign officers to the voting place as needed. The law requires at least one officer be present at all times when the polls are open. Typically, the chief assigns more than that for safety and security and traffic and so forth. So that's what is required.
Very good. Any questions from the board or otherwise? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board vote to approve a sufficient number of police officers, but not less than one, at the polling location at the Milliken Middle School, 145 Lincoln Street, at every election therein, and to designate the police chief as the authority to assign police officers according to scheduling and availability.
Second.
Motion made by Julianne, seconded by Scott. Any other comments? Julianne, how do you vote?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. All right, you're all set with that one. On to issue number 3.
Thank you very much. The third item is another routine matter for the board. Prior to each election, the board is required to execute the warrant for the election, which provides notice to the public of the time and place, and hours, etc. So I have prepared a warrant for you to review, and I would ask that you execute it, and it will be publicly posted. And of course, most of our information nowadays is dispersed through the website and other channels like that, but it is still required by law that we physically post a paper copy of the warrant.
Thank you, Andy. Any questions or comments? Kristen?
I think I know a lot of us get our information electronically, but I've spoken to people who really appreciate that they can access things like that at the senior center and the library. So where will it be, Andy?
The town's bylaws require that the warrant be physically posted at the town office building, the library, the U.S. Post Office, and also the election location, which is now just Milliken Middle School. So those are the four required. I'd certainly be happy to provide additional copies for the folks up at the senior center just to cover that as well, even though it's not required by the town bylaw.
Yeah, that might be a nice thing to add. And I don't know how many, I mean, I know it's required to have it at the middle school, but that's kind of funny. I don't know how many people are going to be there. But I think the senior center is a good idea. So
yeah, the middle school is required because it is the polling place. It used to be required to post at each elementary school, but now it's just the one.
Sure.
So yeah. Save the little paper.
How about the high school? Since we do have voters, not obviously we have staff at all the buildings, but we have young voters that might be new to the process. If there's a good place at the high school, maybe it would be a good idea.
We can certainly share the actual paper copy of the warrant as well as information. I actually just reached out to some National Honor Society students and the staff at Algonquin regarding conducting a voter registration drive in October prior to the November election. Obviously, the timing doesn't work with the school schedule for the primary, but that's something we try to do on a regular basis, even though most young people tend to register online. It's still good to at least remind them that they should do that and make paper forms available, and or simply give them a link to the online registration portal. Myself and the town clerk in Southborough will do that jointly, and that's something we'll be doing in October. So we certainly try to inform them and make the young people aware of their opportunities to register and, of course, to vote. So good thought.
Very good. Thank you. Actually, I have a somewhat related question, probably more for John than you, Andy. At what point do we put out the big electronic sign that says there's an election coming up, usually that goes in front of the DPW? Want to make sure we do that with plenty of notice. I know primaries aren't as exciting as general elections are to a lot of people, but I think turnout is important anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Those are for usually the DPW. So if there's a project they need, they'll be used for that. But obviously, if they're not in need for that, they typically go out at least a week ahead of time. Sometimes they'll go out and then they'll disappear if they have to be used. But they typically put them out about a week or so ahead of time, depending on availability.
Good. Sounds great. All right, there being no other comments or questions, is there a motion on the ballot?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I move the board vote to approve and execute the September 6, 2022 state primary election warrant as submitted by Town Clerk Andrew Dowd.
Second.
Motion made by Jason, seconded by Julianne. Any other comments or questions? Kristen, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. Congratulations, Mr. Dowd. You've got yourself a ballot.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if you don't mind, I'd like to just give a very brief update on the upcoming elections.
I would love that. Thank you.
And this information is all posted on the website, and it's been there for quite some time. As you know, the state primary is being held September 6th, which is the Tuesday after Labor Day. And that was the warrant you just executed. And then the state election, the general election, will be held on Tuesday, November 8th, later in the fall. This year, with the changes in the election laws that are now permanent, all voters are eligible to vote by mail, vote early in person, or vote in person on election day. So the options are extensive, and we've been seeing those in the past couple of years on a temporary basis. But now that the permanent changes to the election laws were finally passed earlier this summer, that's in place. So the vote by mail part of that law required that the Secretary of the Commonwealth mail postcards to all registered voters in Massachusetts. I'm sure many of you have seen them arrive at your own homes last month. To date, we've received probably 1,500 or so postcards. 1,300 of those folks requested ballots for the upcoming primary. Those have all been mailed out at this point. It's a lot of labor-intensive process, but we've gotten it done, and I'm happy to say that we're caught up with everything. So pretty much now on a daily basis, we still are receiving requests, and of course now we're actually receiving ballots back, which have to be checked in and so forth. So that process is fully underway. I would just encourage folks that did request a mail-in ballot to please consider returning it by using the drop box at Town Hall. There is the very convenient drive-up box right in the front of the building, adjacent to the U.S. mailbox. And there's also a box and a slot in the entry door at the side of the building, and all of those are emptied daily, and it's a great option to return because the mail unfortunately is slow. Although the outgoing mail, they've done a good job of keeping the ballots in Northborough and not sending them out to the distribution center. So those typically arrive to your home much quicker, but getting it back, it still does follow that longer route, which can delay it. They tell us sometimes it can take 7 days for a piece of mail to get back. So especially if you're getting closer to the election date, and all those ballots do have to be returned by September 6th. And the postmark does not count. It has to be physically in our hands by 8 p.m. The early voting in person, which is another good option for folks that may prefer to vote when it's not as busy, or they have plans on election day but want to vote in person. We'll be holding those sessions beginning Saturday, August 27th. All the sessions are at Town Hall this year. The first session on Saturday will be held from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then that following week, Monday the 29th, it basically mimics the hours of the town office building. So Monday early voting will take place from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Tuesday, August 30th, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's our late night always, as you know. Wednesday, the 31st of August, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. again. Thursday, September 1st, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the final day of early voting statewide, Friday, September 2nd, our regular hours, 7 a.m. to 12 noon. So that will end at 12 noon. And of course, there will be the same options for November. And we haven't set those actual dates and times yet, but that election requires 2 full weeks of early voting, including 2 weekends. So there'll be lots of opportunity for folks to vote early in person for the November election, as well as vote by mail. That postcard that you received, as you may have noticed, does allow you to request ballots for both elections on the one postcard request form. So the vast majority of folks that have returned their postcard have asked for both ballots. So they're going to automatically receive the November ballot as well. If you didn't receive a postcard, you will receive another one after the primary as a reminder, and that's required by the law. So if you haven't returned one for this election, you will be getting another one shortly after the primary. I believe that covers generally the changes and some of the options. Like I said, most folks are familiar with it because we worked through that all through 2020 with very similar methods, and it worked well. So happy to take any questions.
A question somewhat ancillary to that about local elections. My understanding, and obviously we're not formally talking about the local election, which is several months off, but my understanding is the new law that was just passed gives us a couple of options for local elections as far as early voting and so forth goes. My understanding is we can opt out of early mail-in voting and opt in for early in-person voting. Is that right, Andy?
Yeah, correct. That's kind of an interesting way they worded that in the law. So as you said, the options for the local election, which won't be until next May, we can opt out of mail-in voting. So it's automatic unless the community decides to vote and opt out of it. I see no reason why we would want to opt out. Obviously, folks like the ability to vote by mail, and the difference between early voting and the absentee voting, which has existed for many, many years, is that anyone can vote early by mail. Absentee voting still, because it's in the Constitution of the state, it requires a reason for you to vote absentee. So having that early voting option makes a lot of sense. But then they went the opposite direction for the in-person early voting sessions. That's an opt-in, so it's not automatic. The community will have to decide if they wish to offer it. More than likely we will, but that's something we'll be discussing further next spring, because that will be something that goes before the board, and there's some odd requirements of how the registrars have to vote in a certain way. But in any event, it's just the way the law was written. So we'll certainly be talking about that more next year when we have our annual town election in May.
Good, thank you. Any other comments or questions while Andy is here from board, staff, public? Jason.
Yeah, Andy, just want to say thank you for all the work you do in your office and with the election workers, and look forward to another successful voting season coming up here in the fall.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Very good. There's nothing else, Andy. Thank you very much for your time, and look forward to seeing you at the. I did not send my postcard in, so I look forward to seeing you probably in person on the 6th.
I'll be there.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Okay. And next on our agenda, we have reports. Julianne.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my first item is about CMRPC, Central Mass Regional Planning Committee. I also serve on the District Local Technical Assistance Committee, where recently they approved $10,000 for a net zero planning project. And one of the reasons I bring this up is that they will be looking for community engagement and data gathering. And I'd like to mention that they used Westboro as a model town for a net zero planning, where they have had a Westboro Sustainable Committee for a couple of years, and they have already come up with their own climate action plan. So based on all this information, as well as the information coming from recent bills in Washington and the state, it looks like there's going to be some money and requirements that we need. I think we're going to have to start thinking about a town committee for sustainable Northborough, or however we want to call it. So I'm just bringing that up so we start to think about that. And my second item is about White Cliffs, which met last week. We have hired a consultant through Kirk & Company to help us define and find a partner to help us with the building. The consultant will be reaching out, talking to us as well as Planning Board, Historic District Commission, and the Master Plan Implementation Committee. So the town has many opportunities to meet Brett Pelletier, our consultant, and thinking so far so good. Third, MPIC is meeting this week, and we'll get an update on the consultant who was chosen for the downtown design project. That meeting is Thursday. And I'm also the liaison to Water and Sewer Committee, and I just want to remind everyone, I think Mr. Charpentier already reminded me that people who have public water received postcards, but tomorrow is the public hearing about water rates. And I think that's it for me tonight. Thank you.
Scott, you have any reports for us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just report in terms of liaison responsibilities, covered both the June 19th and July 29th meetings of the Board of Health. where they did reach agreement with Northcourt Pool on the use of lifeguard coverage. And we saw in the latest reports from our epidemiologists information on monkeypox and what to watch for there. Covered the Conservation Commission meetings on July 20th and August 8th. Like to thank the chiefs for their monthly reports. Chief Parenti, given the fire season and drought conditions, is there anything you'd like to say, sir, especially the house fire also that was on Whitney Street? Any guidance and advice you can give to residents in that respect?
You're going to ask me, I could talk for hours, you know that, Scott. Yeah, it's very dry out there. It's we actually had a small brush fire, 2 small brush fires over the weekend that we were able to contain it. I spoke with our regional forester, and we were having some discussions about concerns with fireworks coming up and how safe that would be. So a decision needs to be made on that when it comes to Applefest. And as far as the fire on Whitney Street, that was a very unfortunate incident. It was, you guys have all heard what happens when you use certain rags with certain kinds of materials, and that's what happened. Linseed oil on rags in direct sun that heated up, and very rapidly fire and spread across. Very fortunate that got out. More so because detectors. Oh, every time we have a fire, how critical smoke detectors are, and you got to have them. It's the only life-saving device you're going to have. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Chief. And then finally, it might be on a number of our reports, but just want to say congratulations to Becca Meekins and family on the birth of Casey. It was great to hear that announcement, see the pictures, and glad to hear that everybody's doing well. That ends my report.
Thanks, Scott. Kristen.
Hi. So I wanted to bring up the idea of, it's a little bit sort of piggybacking on sort of the idea Julianne was talking about with the sustainability committee, but this is more of a, like, how would we get there kind of a process related note. I first would like to revise the volunteer application for boards and committees and reword some sections of it, and maybe be more clear also somewhere, if not on that application, then somewhere on that website, of our description of what we're looking for in an applicant for each board and committee, which I realize sort of kind of is a lot of work because it really kind of means you have to look through all the different boards and committees and feel like and figure out what they all do and what you would be looking for each one. So then I think John mentioned this at the beginning of the new season, once Mitch was elected, that if we're going to have boards and committees, if we're going to consider some new ones, we need to revise our list and go through and figure out which old ones maybe we don't need anymore. So all these things are very interconnected anyway. So that was the meat and potatoes of my report. And then I just wanted to also share a quote from Salman Rushdie. The only people who see the whole picture are the ones who step out of the frame. There's some food for thought.
Very good.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Jason?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to piggyback a little bit on the fire department here. First of all, the Whitney Street fire, I do want to say that was a very severe incident, and frankly, one that was down at the corner of my own street. So I was on the scene to be able to see the activity going on. I want to thank the response of the Northborough Fire Department, led at that time by Captain Fred Hurst, who was on the scene and helping to coordinate the activities with the mutual aid response. I think Westboro was particularly a strong participant in helping to put that fire out. And then Chief Parenti, unfortunately, was engaged in his out to dinner with his family for his anniversary and was called back to the scene. As Chief said, just another day in the life of a firefighter. So certainly appreciate the response of all the team involved, and very thankful that no one was injured. And we just hope that remains the case in future circumstances that might arise. The family that was involved of the house, you might know them, Steve and Arlene Marshall. They were the donors of the musical installation down at Ellsworth McAfee Park. They donated that installation in honor of their son, Chris, who passed away a few years ago. So this is really quite another unfortunate incident for that family. And they have the support of family and friends, but we certainly have them in our thoughts. The second thing I wanted to bring up relating to the fire department, there was a notice that went out concerning Jeff Sarapilia, who is seeking a kidney donation. Jeff is the son of Mike and Nancy Sarapilia. Mike is a call firefighter with our Northborough Fire Department, has been for quite a while. Looking particularly for people who are willing to be tested as kidney donor matches. And for information on that, you can go to the town website on the front page there where you see the tabs for town news and town calendar. There's also a social media tab. Click that tab, you'll see the Facebook page for the fire department. Click on that, and the notice for this kidney donation request is posted prominently there. You can see the information about the circumstance, and you can also click on the Tufts kidney donor testing service. So encourage anyone out there who might be willing to go through that process and see if they're a kidney donor match to please do so.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Stephen.
Yep. Thank you, Chief. If there's anything you want to add, Chief, please do.
You covered it very well. Mike's been a long time call firefighter. He's a great guy in town. Just a terrible thing his family's going through, and I was happy to be able to push that out, and it's being shared tons of times. So we're really happy.
Yeah. Jeff was a hockey teammate in youth hockey days with one of my sons, and so I am very familiar with him. Just a very good-natured kid, and I hope that something works out for him. And then finally, yes, I passed on my congratulations to Becca and Christine on the birth of their son Casey, and look forward to hearing a little bit more and seeing maybe a few more pictures along the way, and welcome Becca back when she's able to return. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Very good. The bulk of the items that I had listed are always, as they were tonight, covered by other members, so I won't repeat them. I had a quick, maybe a question for John. I think I read something online about a complete street survey that's going out in the near future.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
It is. So actually, I've got a memo from the DBW director with an explanation. As you know, we received a grant for this. And we are going to be moving forward with, that's actually one of the things I was going to mention under my reports, but moving forward with a complete streets survey. Links will be going up. If they're not, are they up already, Scott?
Oh, they are.
Links are already up. So it's part of the process with regard to public outreach, looking for what people see as priorities and the locations of those. And again, remember now this process is supposed to culminate in the fall. Again, circles back, comes back to the Board of Selectmen, ultimately gets approved by the state, and then eligible, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, for up to $400,000 in grant funding to implement our Complete Streets program. So I know Scott's been giving regular updates to the Master Plan Implementation Committee. So this public outreach is sort of the next phase of that process.
So
Scott, through the chair, Scott, if you want to chime in, anything else I missed?
Sure, just to expand on it a little bit. So the public survey went out this morning. It's up and available through our website. There's a link on the homepage for DPW that brings you to a flyer that describes the Complete Streets program and the process. There's a QR code on that as well as a hot link. Brings you to a relatively short survey. It's got 5 questions. There's an open-ended question at the end for just general input. That'll be open and available to the residents until August 29th, after which all the data will be analyzed by our consultant. Will then become before the Board of Selectmen here for a public input session, public hearing. After that information is gathered, we'll put together the prioritization plan and then come before the board again for endorsement of the plan, which then goes to the Mass DOT for approval. After those processes are complete, then we can start chipping away at the prioritization plan with $400,000 worth of grant money and other funding avenues.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's I know, a very important survey as part of a very important process. So I would encourage everyone watching this meeting to fill out the survey and tell everyone they know to fill out the survey. Thank you very much for the information on that. The only other thing that I'd mention is I've been following the White Cliffs meetings. John and I have had a number of discussions for the benefit of this board of having a walkthrough of White Cliffs for both this board and the White Cliffs committee. I know the White Cliffs committee as a board hasn't even been through the building. We're working on finding a time to do that, hopefully in advance of this board having a discussion about White Cliffs, and just to get an update and process of that. I know one of the issues there is some airborne mold, which I hope both the cooler weather and the installation of dehumidifiers is going to help so that we can safely go through there in the near future. I had nothing else on my report. John, did you have anything?
Yeah, a couple items. Let me just jump on the White Cliffs first. As Julian Hirsch had mentioned, that we have contracted with a consultant. He's begun his work. He's making the rounds. We've had a couple discussions with the committee, but I would like to bring the consultant into your next meeting on September 12th, actually. One of the things he's trying to do is to solicit input and discussions about what the priorities are of the town. Ultimately, all this information will be compiled as part of the request for proposals that we'll be putting out. So he's making the rounds, but I'd like to bring him in, Brett Pelletier of Kirk and Company. I'd like to bring him in at your meeting on September 12th. He's available, and so he's making the rounds. So we're going to get a little bit of an update on kind of where we are at that meeting, as well as give you the board a chance to provide any input regarding that RFP process that you would like to do. The other thing is I wanted to mention at your last meeting, I indicated that the state budget was just getting ready to wrap up, and I was going to give you an update. So at the end, I sent you this by email just today, but just for folks at home, ultimately, we had based our budget our local budget based on the governor's estimate of local aid, which was about a 1.3% increase. Ultimately, which is around about $57,000. Ultimately, as we made our way through working with the Mass Municipal Association, doing a pretty hard lobby that we should be basing the increase in the unrestricted general government aid based upon the original as opposed to revised estimates. So we were really getting shorted on the increase. And I think the legislature and the Senate was willing to listen to that argument. And so at the end of the process, our state aid is going up about $145,000. So as you all know, and again, this does not make or break, a $71 million budget. But what it does do is we have to set our budget in April. We don't have any more information than what the governor says. Generally, we tend to do a little bit better under the legislature, but most often the difference is negligible. It's like $30,000 or $40,000. And we don't really worry about that because we budget on a conservative basis. And ultimately what winds up happening is when we go to set the final tax rate, so for fiscal 2023, the fiscal year that began July 1 of 2022, when we set the tax rate, the final tax rate in November of this year, for this fiscal year, if we received any state aid above and beyond our original estimates, it can only be used effectively to reduce the tax impact. So if you recall, we were looking at a rather significant tax impact in fiscal 2023 for a variety of reasons. But based on the original estimate of about $513 to the average single family home, this little additional amount of state aid that we're going to get based on the final budget, it would reduce that by about $16. So again, helpful, still significant in tax increases that we're looking at. So instead of a $513 estimated tax impact, it's probably along 497 roughly. And obviously that depends on how we do with local receipts and a number of other things. I did want to mention we get additional state aid, but also as part of that final state number, we get our final assessments as well. So the state provides us aid, but they also charge us back for things like being near an MBTA station, mosquito control, and so forth, and charter schools. And so the net increase is always a little bit less. So really, we're looking at about $123,000 at the end of the day, more than what we had anticipated when we set our budget back in April. Again, this is pretty commonplace. I think this year, the unique difference was that the state saw a significant budget surplus in other revenue sources. And so we were really making a hard press through the Mass Municipal Association for them to increase the unrestricted general government aid component. So they listened. We didn't get everything that we asked for, but a little bit additional funding, and every little bit helps. So again, we try to give you worst case scenario when we set the budget in April. And then as we get more detailed information, hopefully those numbers improve a little bit. And on a marginal basis, that impact kind of slides down. So good news for us, not earth shattering. No reason to call a special town meeting to spend that little bit of money. It just will go to help reduce the tax impact, which is one of our primary concerns in fiscal 2023. The other thing I wanted to mention tonight is that I'm going to be sending out a notice regarding the fire station building committee. So we had a feasibility study committee that ran its course. Now that we have completed that, the next phase is to move forward with a building committee. So we'll be advertising that as currently structured. It's got a member of the Board of Selectmen, the Financial Planning Committee, the fire chief, a designee from the fire department, and then 2 citizens at large. So we'll be advertising those positions or those vacancies and looking to make those appointments quickly. As the board knows, and just for the public, we have been working very closely with the seller of 6165 West Main Street. That's the future parcel that is going to be the site of our next fire station. That parcel went through a remediation. We're waiting to get the final groundwater tests for that parcel, make sure that there's no additional contamination. It looks like those are clear, so we need to wait. Working through the DEP reporting submission at this point, has to be accepted by DEP. And essentially, we're going to be looking at probably, hopefully, a closing on that property in about 3 to 4 weeks. So given that, we've already got the RFP and the assessment for the owner's project manager. We're looking at a closing in the next few weeks. It's time to get the building committee up and established and up and running. So on all fronts, it's all good. But and we are working with the owner of 10 Monroe to move forward with that purchase and sale as well. I had some conversations, hopefully going to get her a purchase and sale this week, and we can start pulling all the pieces together and get this thing moving. So so if you're interested in serving, keep an eye out for that advertisement, and we'll be moving very quickly on that over the next 2 weeks. And that's all I have.
Thank you, John. All right, reports are concluded. And
Mr. Chairman,
sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's
can we
fine.
go back to complete streets for a minute? So I'm looking on my screen here. We have very few participants tonight. And the way the one would find the survey is a little embedded in the website. I'm wondering if we can offer paper surveys at the library, the senior center. School will be starting. We need a lot of people to participate in this, and I think we have to think about how to get the word out to get some good participation.
John, any thoughts on alternate ways of?
Most surveying now is done online. I'm not quite sure how to, if somebody wants to fill out a paper survey, we're happy, we can print it out for them and they can fill it out, but we're trying to get this out. It is an electronic survey process. So if anybody has input, they can just send that input into Scott Charpentier directly by email, if that works. Again, we want to get the input. I'm just not entirely clear what you're suggesting.
So the way it was described to me is a person would have to know that this survey is available, go online, go to DPW and find the survey.
Yeah, we're going to send it out through town news to get the word out as well.
Okay.
And Scott and I had talked, and I had spoken with Andy as well, about trying to get it more prominently displayed on the homepage as well.
Good.
So
good.
we do want to try to get people to get to it quickly. But it is a online survey tool. So
what about on the Lions Club sign saying take the complete street survey?
The town plan is also bringing it to the planning board and putting it on the planning board's homepage as well.
Okay.
And she'll be announcing it at the planning board meeting also.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. It looks like if we were to print this out, it would be a 3 to 4 page survey. I know the library has done a couple of electronic surveys prior to the pandemic. What we did is we printed them out for people that didn't want to go through the process or couldn't go through the process of filling them out online, but then someone needed to manually enter them into the same survey system. So it's a little bit of work, but it might be justified in a couple of areas to maybe have a few copies at the library and the senior center. But we'd have to have somebody that's willing to enter them in afterwards. But I think it is important to get as much input as we can on this, and it sounds like we only have 2 weeks to do it.
I'd be happy to a stack of printouts at town hall in the hallway, the library, as well as the senior center. There'll be an earlier timeline to submit them. The August 29th deadline is tight when it comes to future grant deadlines, and there's time for data analysis just for the online component. This adds a few days for data input for our consultant to be doing that work as well as cost.
I appreciate that offer. That sounds great, and certainly understand about getting the paper copies in a little bit earlier so they can get into the system. That's great. Kristen.
Just quick. So I just found the survey on the DPW page. I do agree that if you could get it on that home page, I think it would make a lot of difference, because otherwise it's like 3 clicks away.
Yeah, and we want to send it out through a link through the town news as well. So anybody signed up for town news can.
Is that do you mean the email, John?
Yes.
Town news? Yeah.
So anytime we have something that we're announcing to, generally the public that's most engaged is signed up for town news. So if there's an issue in town, not an emergency, but information we want to get out. Also the newspapers as well. So we make sure that they're aware of it. And there may be some media coverage on the survey itself.
The Northborough Guide is an email anyway. So if they had the link, that would be really helpful. But your town news and the emails is really good.
Yep.
I get that.
All right, if there's nothing else under reports, we'll move along to a couple of appointments. First one is Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee. I want to thank the interview committee for their hard work, particularly working on both of these. There were a number of interviews that were conducted, and I know particularly for the first one, it's hard to staff up a brand new committee and figure out the right balance. So I thank you for doing that work. I'll entertain a motion or any discussion.
I guess I'd like to start with a discussion.
Sure.
So a couple concerns with the process that we went through, an extension of the discussion that led to a second round of candidates and appointments. In both the second round of DIEB interviews and the ZBA interview process as well. The first concern is there's an idea that was brought up that there's certain special committees such that if someone is a member of a special committee, that it might necessarily disqualify them from being on another committee. And I'd like to get this board's input and hopefully a decision that such classifications is counter to getting maximizing the number of applicants and getting all of our boards and committees filled. So I'll leave it right there at that first concern.
Earlier in the meeting, it was Christian who had brought up the idea of updating the forms for submitting interest for committees. It may be worthwhile for this board to have a discussion about the whole application and interview and appointment process at some point over the next several months. Including your concerns, Scott, to update our policies and expectations for how that is handled.
Okay.
I don't know if that addresses your concern right here. If there's anything else.
No, of course, it's just to be discussed then.
Yeah.
That's fine. The second concern specific to the DEIB committee and the second round of applicants. The comments by board members that we did not have quote the right unquote candidates for the process, and that then led to a second round that was then an open slate of appointees, and then board members saying that they would take it upon themselves to individually recruit candidates, and then during the interview process characterize that recruitment as strong-arming a candidate to apply. And then members of the interview committee that strong-armed candidates being in a position to then deliberate and make recommendations, and then being members of this board decide on those appointments. I'm concerned that sets a bad look for both the interview committee and this board and the overall process. And so I want to make sure that going forward in any appointment and any interviewing and candidacy, that it's not the intention of board members to force people to apply, nor to single-handedly recruit people, especially when we're the ones that are deciding on those appointments.
I'll respond to that briefly. I think recruiting is an important role of members of the board, whether you're on the interview subcommittee or not, to try to get the best applicants in place. And if you know somebody, I hope we've all done that. If we have somebody in mind, we reach out to them. I hope no one was strong-armed into forcing them or otherwise to apply, because if somebody is strong-armed into a position that they might need to be on for 3 years, they might not be a great member or last the duration of their term. So I hope that didn't occur. I'm not aware of that occurring, but I hope that's not the case. Jason.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think to Scott's point, I certainly agree that to some extent, people who are involved in town government are likely to and probably should be out recruiting other people to participate. I don't really have a problem with that directly, but in this particular case, it seemed to be that recruitment was a reaction to dissatisfaction with the initial pool of candidates based on some criteria that the interview subcommittee members chose to apply. And so in the initial case where it was an open application process and those first candidates were the ones to come forward, that would have been the time for anybody who thought they wanted to recruit people or thought there was a need to recruit people to do it during that initial phase. In this case, it seemed to be, as I said, a reaction to the initial pool of candidates, in some sense not being sufficiently suitable for the purpose of the committee. And the second phase was an attempt to correct that deficiency. So
Final.
yeah, I mean, I'm not presuming to read the minds of our committee members and what they had in mind. I'm saying that certainly is the appearance of what happened to anyone who's viewing the process.
If I can finish this with a final concern, and then I'll yield.
Sure.
So
Scott.
because the reason I want to cut in front, into this is, once again, I want us to be careful in discussing the reasons the first pool of candidates were thought to be insufficient. It's very easy to get into language that becomes problematic and misunderstood, and in some cases, establish criteria that is illegal. So we had some reactions, right, to our previous conversation on this, that was both carried out live and via email threads back and forth. So that my final concern is just, let's be careful in the language we use and choose the words well, and not establish criteria that is inappropriate for our discussing applicants. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Scott. Kristen, you have your hand up.
So this is one correction in an email that Julianne asked Diane to make to the meeting minutes. She says this is directly from the DEIB charge that we all voted on. To the greatest extent possible, the members of the committee shall be diverse and drawn from underrepresented groups. So to the extent that it seemed like, and I can use myself because I'm pretty sure it was me doing most of the talking at that meeting. I did feel that the people who applied the first time were, well, we needed 6 and we only had 5 people show up to the interviews, and they didn't all represent underrepresented groups. They weren't all drawn from underrepresented groups. And I was trying to stick to that wording. That was the wording I was trying to be very, very careful about. So, and that is the wording that's in the charge, that's in the description in the of the committee. So I think that was the most important wording to follow. And I very much enjoyed the verb strong arm coming from Jason at that meeting, and I thought it was kind of a funny thing, the idea that I would ever strong arm anybody. So really what I did was recruit, and strong arm was just sort of a funny kind of like, I mean, I took it as sort of almost like a sarcastic sort of let's not twist arms, right? And the thing is, like, well, Scott, you've been on the interview committee, and I know Jason has done a huge share of being on the Board of Selectmen. So I don't know when he was on the interview committee, but I know he's done interviews. It's really impossible to, really twist someone's arm to apply to be a volunteer on a town committee. They have to want to do it. What they need from us is encouragement. And I'm pretty sure that all I gave everyone that I reached out to. A few people said, no, thanks. I really don't have time. And a few people said, sure, I'll throw my hat in the ring and send an application. And then some other people heard that we were doing more interviews and decided, oh, well, maybe they still need people. Maybe I'll just put myself out there. as well. So I think it was a really good thing. And I think we got some great people. We even had a little more people than we can use. And I really appreciate all those people who sat for those interviews and answered those questions. And some of my conversations that night, I think it was that night, why I wrote the report that I wrote about the boards and the committees and the application and everything. So I'm learning along the way about the interviews, but I do think that everything we've done so far is the way that I'm proud that we've done it. I feel very comfortable with all of it.
I'll add that this particular committee is a hard one hard and different than most other committees. Most other applications are reviewed based on your professional or personal or government experience, and secondarily, in most cases, of sort of who you are. This particular committee, right up at the top of the list of what we wanted to assemble, was a diverse group of who you are. And that's something town governments don't always do. And one of the reasons we're forming this committee, I think, is to do that a little bit better. Perhaps some of these challenges were a little bit of growing pains of figuring out the right ways of doing those things. Kristen.
Yeah, just one more thing to piggyback on that idea is when I went to my first webinar about race relations and microaggressions and that kind of thing, a lot of what they talked about was that this will be awkward, and for the white people, right, in this particular case, like this will be awkward, and that's okay. Like you just have to deal with a little awkwardness, and as long as you know that it's okay to be awkward, then I feel like then you can stumble around all you want, and it's not like you're doing anything wrong.
Thank you, Kristen. Julianne, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we had excellent applicants, and what we kept going back to was the charge from the diversity committee, which was very, very helpful when we had to, to choose. We had more than we were assigned to the committee. So I just want to make a comment to all the people who applied that they were all excellent candidates in their own way, but we had these guidelines to go by, and it's not easy. But I'm sorry that you felt that way, Scott, that we were somehow not following the correct charge.
Okay. Scott, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I guess my specific point is being missed in that we had a board member say that we must have a candidate of a certain characteristic, and then intended and told us at our meeting that they were going to go out and individually find people of that type. And that is the problematic language that I'm really talking about. And I'm going to leave it at that. The overall candidates and the results and the response is fabulous. Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I am saying that we had an individual on this board say some problematic things, indicate they were going to go do something, did that, and we'll have some votes later on this evening about the candidates that they brought forward. It sets a very bad look for this board. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Kristen, I'd like to wrap up this discussion. I'm not going to cut anybody off, but my hope is this can be the conclusion before we move on to voting on this.
All right. Well, if my use of the term Black was a problematic language for anyone, I I don't really understand that. That's all I want to say.
Once again, not that you insisted on someone of a certain characteristic. I guess that's what seems wrong to me.
Well, there isn't anyone of that characteristic. We didn't end up having any Black applicants, so I'm not sure why you're so frustrated about any particular language. There aren't. We didn't get any Black candidates, and there's nobody. It would be nice to have representation from every type of diversity, and we just did the best we could with the people who applied.
And that's really my point. We must do the best we can with the people that applied. And you had a couple criteria. We don't have to go any further on this, but the end result is fine. We've got some great candidates. The way you went about it, and I am talking specifically about the terms you used in our meeting prior, that's what sets a bad look.
Okay.
I disagree, but that's okay. We don't have to keep having this conversation, Mitch. Sorry.
Yeah. I think it feels like we've reached the end of that discussion. I think it's important to have. We can always do better. This particular committee is being enacted to help us do better. And I think we'll learn a lot about the fine people that are about to be from the people that are about to be appointed to the committee. If there's no other discussion before we vote, I'll entertain a motion.
So you're waiting for the motion for, oh, sorry, you want to make a comment?
Yeah, Scott, did you have a comment before?
Just one, based on my concerns, I would prefer separate motions for the appointees. But if the consensus of the board to do it as a single slate, that's fine as well. If it is a single slate, I will vote no.
Okay. I'll leave that up to whoever is Kristen has been asked to make the motion or motions, however you see fit. So the board knows John prepares the motions ahead of time, and then I assign those motions. The preparation was individual motions for the sake of brevity, and for only that sake, I wrapped it up in one motion. But the email that went out with those motions listed both. Kristen, I'll leave it up to you how you want to go forward. And Scott, if you have an objection to a particular person that you would vote no on, you're welcome to, whether it be offer an amendment or note that in a vote, if in comments, if the motion is combined. Okay, Kristen.
Okay, I can do them individually. I move the board vote to appoint Sierra Shelton to the, can I just say DEIB? Is that okay? Or should I say the whole thing every time?
I think that's probably fine, John.
The acronym is fine. We know what you're speaking about.
Okay, great. So I move the board vote to appoint Sierra Shelton to the DEIB committee for a partial 3-year term as recommended by the interview committee.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Kristen, seconded by Julianne. Any comment on this motion? Okay, Kristen, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. Congratulations. Next.
I move the board vote to appoint Melissa Diglio to the DEIB committee for a partial 3-year term as recommended by the interview committee.
Second.
Julianne, how do you vote?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. Next up.
I move the board vote to appoint Miriam Ibrahimi to the DEIB committee for a partial 2-year term as recommended by the interview committee.
Second.
Motion made by Kristen, seconded by Julianne. Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote unanimous in favor. Congratulations, Miriam. Next.
I move the board vote to appoint Cynthia Moore to the DEIB committee for a partial 2-year term as recommended by the interview committee.
Second.
Motion made by Kristen, seconded by Julianne. Kristen, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote unanimous in favor. Congratulations, Cynthia. Kristen?
I move the board vote to appoint Young Tan to the DEIB committee for a partial 1-year term as recommended by the interview committee.
Second.
Motion made by Kristen, seconded by Julianne. Jason, how do you vote?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Congratulations. Vote unanimous in favor. Kristen?
I move the board vote to appoint Ashish Verma to the DEIB committee for a partial 1-year term as recommended by the interview committee.
Second.
Motion made by Kristen, seconded by Julianne. Let's see. How do you vote? Scott?
Although I appreciate the work by Dr. Verma and his skills, and he would be a good member for the aforementioned reasons, no.
Julianne, how do you vote?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is 4 in favor, 1 opposed. Congratulations. And Kristen, I think that's it, correct?
Yes.
Thank you
That's
very
it.
much for all of those motions, and congratulations to all members. That concludes that agenda item. And next we're on to appointment to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Someone like to make a motion or have any comment before such a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion. I move the board vote to appoint Suzanne Cislika to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a partial 3-year term as recommended by the interview committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Julianne, seconded by Kristen. Any other discussion? Scott?
I had mentioned about the special committees that came up during ZBA as well. We'll talk about that as we redo applications. Another idea then, as we do redo applications, is when we have applicants that are already serving on committees, one question that might be good to ask them and a discussion to have during the interview is their level of commitment and interaction and level of time and effort in those other committees. And in some cases, the candidate may wish to step down from those other committees and preference for, the one they're applying for. And those discussions, having an opportunity to have that discussion, right, for a candidate to indicate their preference or even stepping down to take responsibility would be good going forward. It did not happen in these cases, but it's something that would be good to move forward with.
Sure. I'll add, in this particular case, when you have an associate member apply for a permanent position, then assuming that this motion is approved, that then there's an associate position that is opened up, it might be feasible to deal with them at the same time. And that's also something that we can, the next time we revisit the policies on the appointment process, take a look and see if there's a way we can deal with that simultaneously.
That was going to be the next question, exactly that, because seeing that a alternate had applied in preparation, right, could have run the scenario through that if the alternate was selected, should those current candidates be then considered immediately for the alternate, or should a whole new round of applications go through? So yeah, that brought up a really good question in this point.
Good. Any other questions before we vote? Jason?
Yes, I would like to have substantially more discussion about this candidate before we proceed to a vote. Through the chair, I would like to inquire whether any of the other board members have actually observed the ZBA meetings over the past year during the candidate's term of service as an alternate.
I have observed some of the meetings. I haven't watched everyone.
I have as well.
I have I've watched definitely watched one or two, but not a lot where this candidate was speaking, I think.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Sure, of course.
1 year ago in the spring, when we were conducting interviews for the ZBA, Scott Rogers and I were the members of the interview subcommittee. And as we do with every candidate that comes through there, we asked them the question, do you understand the time commitment and preparation required both in meetings and outside of meetings to capably, constructively, and reliably serve on the ZBA? And are you able to make that time commitment? And the answer we received from this candidate was, I do, and I am. I do understand the time commitment, and I am able to make the time commitment. If you go back through the meetings over the past year, from May of 2021 through the end of June 2022, you'll find there were 12 meetings conducted. 11 of those are regular meetings of the ZBA where they conducted hearings for one or more applicants. And the 12th one was a joint session with the planning board to review the draft language of articles that the planning board was preparing to bring to town meeting in January. Of those 12 meetings, the candidate was, as I would characterize it, on time, in view, and fully attentive and undistracted throughout the meeting. 5 out of 12 meetings. One occasion was a full absence. That's not unusual for any member because it was July. It could have been a summer vacation conflict. 4 occasions where the candidate was not on time for the start of the meeting. One of those was 6.5 minutes. One of those was 17 minutes. One of those was 25 minutes. And one of those was 45 minutes late to the meeting. In the case of the 25-minute late instance, that was missing 23 minutes of a 33-minute hearing. The last 2 occasions, this past May and past June, the candidate was operating remotely from her car at some other location. And in the first instance was off video for the first 27 minutes of the meeting, which was the entire duration of the first hearing that evening, and was 11 minutes of a 60-minute second hearing that evening. Because of that outage, and because the board was down 1 member with another member leaving the meeting early, they had to disrupt their usual process of conducting all hearings before doing any deliberations and votes. Instead, they had to immediately deliberate and vote on the first 2 hearings while the member who was scheduled to leave the meeting was still present and able to vote as a constructive member during those 2 hearings. The final instance in June, the candidate was on time for roll call, again in her car at a remote site, but in this occasion was required to mute her video more than a dozen times for periods lasting from a few seconds to 45 seconds, and then had a 12-minute outage at the end of the meeting where she apparently exited her car and was standing on the playing field where she was located, and seemingly was distracted throughout the duration of the meeting by the surroundings where she found herself. So I would argue that 5, what I would consider to be reliable and fully attentive meetings out of 12 is not a particularly strong recommendation to advance an alternate member to a voting member's seat. The purpose of meeting remotely was initially to accommodate the COVID situation, and now secondarily to kind of accommodate the habit of meeting remotely. It provides its certain conveniences, but it certainly isn't a mechanism to be used for a board member to multitask their meeting participation with other conflicting demands that they have on their time during that meeting. And so I am concerned. The reason we have an alternate seat is to, in effect, test drive candidates. I don't doubt the candidate's expertise or ability to serve in this capacity. But the fact is, the record over the past year has not been a very reliable one in terms of on-time meeting attendance and being in view and verifiably engaged in the conduct of the meeting. And so arguably, if these were one-year terms, we'd be meeting here tonight to decide whether to reappoint the candidate given this track record. It's not a one-year term, it's a 3-year term. I'm happy to give the candidate additional runway here over the remaining 2 years of the term as an alternate to demonstrate an ability to make the commitment that this committee requires. But I'm not inclined to support moving this candidate to a voting position. I'd be happy to provide any further detail that any board member requires to substantiate what I'm presenting.
Thank you, Scott. Kristen, before I recognize you again, I actually did speak with the applicant about what turned out to be a couple of the things that you brought up. I believe both of the recent interview committee meetings that she had to attend conflicted with zoning board meetings. And she was either late or had to leave early for zoning board meetings because of the interviews being scheduled. That certainly doesn't account for every instance that you laid out, but I wanted to make clear that it wasn't entirely soccer fields or anything of the sort. Kristen.
I have a question and a comment. So my question is actually for Jason. That's okay. Were there any meetings where she had to vote? Was casting a vote that counted, in one of these meetings as the alternate because someone was missing or something?
So if I go back through the meetings, what I find is that all other members of the ZBA had a much more consistent and reliable record in terms of starting the meeting on time, being in view for the duration of the meeting, and being able to vote if they were voting members and not requiring the introduction of an alternate. For comparison, if you want a comparison, the other alternate member, Jeff Leland, over this same set of 12 meetings, was absent one time for the September meeting, and in all other cases was fully present through the entirety of the meetings that were conducted. Second, for 10 of the 12 meetings, while he was still a member of the ZBA, Richard Rand was on time and fully present and engaged in the meeting without distraction, without interruption.
Okay, well, that's not actually what I asked. I just asked if she voted, but if you didn't check that, it's not really that important.
She had a few occasions to vote, yes. As an alternate, it's not necessarily a very frequent thing that they're called upon to do.
Okay, so that's kind of the point that I was going to make, is that being an alternate on a committee when you're probably not going to get called upon to vote, but you're listening in your car because you're the mom of 3 kids and you're really busy trying to manage a schedule, having been in exactly that point. And as we were talking about earlier, before the cameras went on, how many people wanted to have more than 2 kids? Not that many, because it's a lot of work and you have to go from man to zone defense. Having been that mom, I never volunteered for anything when I was that mom, unless it had to do with the school, unless it had to do with my children, because I didn't think I could manage it. And I really applaud these moms who have been running town boards and committees in Northborough and can manage and juggle as many things as they do. Now, would I expect her to be the kind of person who's continuing to really pay more attention to soccer than she is to the ZBA meeting that she's not voting on? Like, okay, but if she is voting, would she be paying attention? Would she be home at her computer? Hopefully, if she couldn't be home at her computer, she had to drive somebody somewhere, something, would it be possible for her to really give it her attention? I think that's something that's a choice that she needs to make. And yes, I would expect her to prioritize her ZBA meeting over a soccer game when she has 3 soccer games a week to go to, because she led me to believe that she has made that choice.
Before we continue, I would request that members, when they're referring to the process, talk more generically about qualifications or expectations, and not mention either the applicant's name or refer to her by pronoun or anything like that. It would be appreciated, and I think more appropriate. Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to be clear. I'm not criticizing the applicant for whatever demands are placed upon them that intrude upon their ability to serve on the ZBA. My point is that it's the responsibility of this board as the appointing authority to try to ensure that all members that are appointed to the ZBA are able to make the time commitment without tardiness, without conflicts, without distractions, without multitasking from a remote meeting. The purpose of most of ZBA meetings is to conduct public hearings for applicants that are before the board. And all members, whether they're voting members or alternates, need to be fully engaged in that process, because they don't know when or if they'll be called upon to actually participate as a voting member. The distinction between voting members and alternates is simply one of who is in line to vote when the decision is made. It's not about how engaged or disengaged you can be as a participant in a particular meeting, when it's scheduled, when it's being conducted. So as I mentioned earlier, my point is that over this past year, a candidate has not demonstrated a sufficient level of commitment and distraction-free service for the meetings of the ZBA when they are scheduled, when they are conducted. And in my opinion, it is not appropriate for this board to elevate somebody with that record to a voting seat. I think additional time is required in the alternate seat, a longer sample size, so that we can be certain that if the candidate continues in service on this board, they'll be able to satisfy the requirements of the board as virtually every other member of the ZBA was able to do over the past year.
Thank you, Jason. I think you've made your point very well. In broad strokes, prior to COVID and prior to the ability to have remote meetings, it was very simple whether someone was there and paying attention or not. This is now more varied. Maybe as part of the discussion of the application and interview process, maybe we add some expectation as to how people could or should conduct themselves over remote meetings. We've never done that. This board has never done that, even before my time here. I will take your point that there may be situations that that could be a little bit different, but to me, that does not disqualify the applicant. Does anybody else have any additional comments that have already been raised before we vote? Julianne, you have your hand up.
I think this is a slippery slope when you start commenting that a person is distracted during a meeting. It's, you know, that's some people can can watch TV and write a thesis, and other people need to be focused. And if that's kind of a personal thing. So I take issue with commenting on someone's level of attention, of paying attention. The other comment was about tardiness and being there to vote. So generally, I mean, at any of the meetings, I don't think that there was a situation where two alternates had to vote. And when there's another alternate there, sometimes you feel like, everything is covered well. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Jason, if you have something additional.
I would certainly disagree with the notion that someone who mutes their video is verifiably present and not distracted and engaged in meeting. It's certainly not the practice of any members of this board during Board of Selectmen meetings. It's not been the practice of any other member of boards generally that I've observed. And in the particular case of the ZBA, where you have applicants before the board and hearings are being conducted, it's a requirement, in my opinion, for the benefit of this board as the appointing authority, for the benefit of the general public, and for the benefit of the applicant who's before the board to feel that all the members of the board that are hearing his application are present and engaged and attentive. And for someone to either not be present visibly or to frequently blank their video throughout the duration of a meeting, I feel that's problematic for the applicant and for anyone who's viewing the meeting to have confidence that the board member is fully engaged and fully attentive. And otherwise, I'm asking, what's the necessity of having to mute your video or so frequently mute your video throughout the duration of a meeting?
I will say I've been on a number of committee meetings where there were other attendees, not myself, who did have to mute their video occasionally, sometimes for longer stretches due to the various things that come up in life when you have remote meetings and you're meeting at home. It doesn't bother me as long as the person is able to generally pay attention. I have certainly seen this applicant ask a number of questions and be extremely engaged in the meetings in which they have attended. I don't know if we can take this any further. If someone has additional comments that haven't already been raised, I'm happy to hear them. Other than that, I'd like to head to a vote. Jason, you have your hand up again.
Yes, I would just like to say that among the applicants we have for this interview cycle was another former member of the ZBA who over this period of time did demonstrate a very consistent and dependable record of on-time appearance and on-video appearance and engagement throughout the proceedings. And in fact, chairing the meeting for a number of the meetings that were conducted over the past year. So my assertion would be that among the candidates who are presented, Richard Rand actually has demonstrated the greater blend of experience, understanding, knowledge, and reliability in his participation in the meetings of the ZBA. If this vote does not pass, it's my intention to make a motion to appoint Richard Rand to this voting seat.
Thank you, Jason. Are we ready to vote? Okay, I see no further comments. We have already a motion. I apologize. Yes, we do have a motion in a second. Is that correct? This has been going on for so long. I do remember hearing Susie's name. Julianne, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jason, how do you vote?
No.
Kristen, how do you vote?
Aye.
Scott, how do you vote?
No.
I vote aye. The vote passes 3-2. Congratulations, Mrs. Cislika. I appreciate the discussion that came up during this process. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, I do think it is worthwhile for us to think about the appointment and interview process a little bit further. These two that we dealt with tonight were a little bit more extreme than others, but they're also good learning experiences. Anybody have any comments or questions before we move on with our agenda? Which sneakily gives me the time to go back to our agenda again. Meeting schedule.
Sorry, Mitch, can I just say one thing?
Yes, Kristen. Yes, absolutely.
So this is just a weird coincidence, but tonight I have been way more distracted than usual, and most of it has been pet drama that I just didn't want you all to have to listen to a barking dog in the background. So I apologize for that.
Not a problem. And during that discussion, my Wi-Fi dropped off briefly, and I was probably frozen in some silly pose for about 30 seconds. And if anybody saw me typing, I was responding to my wife, who also lost Wi-Fi and was asking what was going on. These things happen. All right, so meeting schedule. So in the meeting packet, you see a set of meeting dates. I had responded to John suggesting that we had a lot of business coming over the next few months, that I thought it did make sense for us to have 2 regular meetings each month. And so that would be 3 in December because of financial trend monitoring. He responded back with some suggested dates, which are in the motions that were distributed to others. Does anyone have any conflicts or concerns or anything else before a motion is made on the dates? Kristen.
I told you this earlier, Mitch, but just so everybody else understands, I will be in London on September 12th. So with the time difference and everything, I will do my best to log in. I should be in Wi-Fi at a hotel, but I may be a maybe on that one.
Okay, yeah, if I do my time zone math properly, that's at about, the meeting would start at about midnight London time.
Yeah.
And we probably will have a bit of work to do, but I appreciate letting us know. Does anyone have any known conflicts for any of the dates that were proposed in the motion that went out before the meeting? Julianne?
I might have a conflict for the December 19th, but I can most likely take it remotely, barring unforeseen circumstances. Okay. So
I appreciate that. And I will add, because someone did ask, that the September 26th proposed date is the second evening of Rosh Hashanah, which is a holiday for me, but that is not a particular evening of a holiday that for me would be a conflict. I think, some others of the Jewish faith may have a conflict there, but it's okay with me, and I don't think we have any other members that that would fall upon. So I'm fine with that date. If nothing else, I'll entertain a motion on the meeting dates.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to set the meeting schedule for September through December as follows: September 12th and 26th, October 3rd and 17th, November 7th and 21st, December 5th and 19th, and December 15th as the joint financial trend monitoring report presentation.
Second.
Motion made by Scott, seconded by Jason. Any other discussion? Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Julianne?
I
also vote aye. Great. We've got some meetings to do. John, I appreciate the time in putting this together, and I know I added a couple more, and I know every meeting also means work for you, not just for us. So I appreciate that, particularly during December. We'll discuss and see if there are ways we can mitigate that, because I know financial trend monitoring is a tremendous amount of work for you to prepare for. Great. All right, we've got a couple of cemetery deeds. Someone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to execute cemetery deeds 1152 and 1153.
second.
Motion made by Jason, seconded by Julianne. Any other discussion? Julianne, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
I also vote aye, vote unanimous in favor. We have one final opportunity for public comment. If anyone in the audience wishes to speak to anything at this point, whether it was on our agenda or not. Otherwise, is there any other business before the board before we entertain a motion for executive session?
No other business this evening?
Okay, I will entertain a motion for executive session.
Mr. Chairman, I move the board vote to enter into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Subsection 3, litigation, SA Farms, and Marlboro wastewater treatment plant, and collective bargaining strategy planning, due to the chair's determination that a discussion regarding these matters in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the position of the board.
Second.
Motion made by Julianne, seconded by Scott. Any discussion? Kristen,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Jason,
Aye.
Julianne.
Aye.
I also vote aye. We have adjourned our public meeting at, I have 9:25 p.m. I will see the rest of you in executive session. To the public, thank you for joining us this evening.